Hi, my name is Jim, and welcome to another episode of This Old Gun. What I'm going to cover today is not actually an antique, but it's antique style. I'm a traditional muzzleloader hunter, which means that I'm going to be using a flintlock for a lot of my deer hunting, even during regular gun season. So what I'm going to cover today is the stuff that I carry in my possibles bag. And a possibles bag is almost like a woman's purse, but it's got all the stuff that you could possibly need to keep your firearm running when you're out hunting. Now, muzzleloader hunting can be real simple or it can be a little complicated. It depends on what style that you go through. Some guys like to go for the modern inlines, and it's not very gear intensive at all because they're using speed loading tubes and they're carrying just a small amount of gear with them. Me, I used to be a reenactor for French and Indian War, Revolutionary War, Civil War. So I kind of tend to lean towards being what you'd call a 21st century long hunter or a 21st century mountain man. So starting off with the rifle here, this is a factory built gun, 54 caliber Thompson Center. They don't make these anymore, but I chose this thing because it looks very similar to a Hawkins rifle and is a flintlock. I call these things my rock hammered guns because you actually have a rock that strikes the frizzen up here, drops a spark into the pan, sets off a powder charge, which goes in, flashes into the main charge, which then fires the gun. And you can see this particular model has double set triggers on it. The rear one back here sets the front one to just a small touch. Doesn't take much pressure. So let's talk about some of the gear in this thing. This is my possibles bag. I make a lot of my own equipment, a lot of my own gear. So this is hand stitched. So we'll start with the outside here. Since this is a flintlock, I like to have a little, what they call a whisk and a pick to keep all the fouling cleared away. That rides on my strap until I'm out in the woods hunting, and then it fits over a button on my shirt and it dangles there. So I've got a pick. This is for keeping the touch hole clear. Goes right into the touch hole. And then here's a whisk made out of horsetail, just a little pan brush. I can clean all the dry, unburned stuff away from the pan. So that's the first thing. You can be just as complex or as simple as you want to be, but I've been doing this, almost 30 years now. So I tend to be kind of a gear junkie. Now, none of this is all going to be period correct to one time period because some of the gear I'm going to show you here doesn't date back to the 1700s. But it's stuff that I use anyway. Okay, secondly, I've got a short starter and a powder measure here on this little tether. It stays on my strap so I don't lose them. That's to get the ball started. You punch that down and get it started before you ram it. And then I've got this adjustable brass powder measure that I keep as a secondary. So let's get into the possibles bag. Like I said, you can go as complex or as simple as you want. Now, you've already seen these in another one of my videos, a little fire starting kit. We'll set that aside. I've got my little priming flask that I made. It's got a little spring plunger tip. Once I have the powder charge and the ball rammed in, I'll show you this real quick. I can prime the pan because I'm carrying 4F in that. Close the pan. Now, keep in mind this is not loaded, so all it's going to do is flash. And if everything's all good to go, this is what you're going to get. I have some spare rifle flints. I've got what's called a cow's knee. All this is just a piece of leather that I've got soaked in boiled linseed oil. And in inclement weather, I can tie this around the stock to cover the frizzing and the pan to waterproof it, keep rain or snow from getting to it. And then when I'm ready to fire, I just undo the front, pull it back, and let it dangle, and I'm ready to fire. Here's an 80 grain powder measure I made out of a deer antler tine. Have it tethered to the bag, 80 grains, and it is pre-measured by volume. You see I made a little divot right here, so it's like a pouring spout. So what you want to keep in mind is on your powder horn here, and I'm getting tangled up, you never want to load directly from the powder horn. Reason being is if there's a stray spark inside the barrel and you're pouring directly from the powder horn, this thing becomes a small hand grenade. And you don't want to be picking cow horn shrapnel out of your skin. But what you'll do, I've got a little spring-loaded plunger here. Before you load your gun, you'll go into your powder measure right there, fill it to the top, level it off, you'll pour that down the bore. But I'm using 80 grains. That's my primary. My secondary backup, in case something happens with this, I've got one up here on this, on my carry strap. If I'm shooting round ball, I've got a homemade round ball block made out of hard maple. And I've got 6 pre-patched 54 caliber bullets. So all I got to do when I've got the powder in, I can set this over the muzzle, and then I can use my short starter, smack a ball clean through, patch and all, and then I can ram it down once the short starter's got it going. Now, when I'm doing some serious big critter hunting, I have some precast bullets, pre-lubed bullets that are conicals, maxi bullets. Got so much grease in there, I wonder if I can get one out for you. There we go. Right now there's grease in the grease grooves. You don't use a patch with these. And this thing will weigh 365 grains versus about 200 odd for the round ball. These are pretty accurate for big critters. The rifling in this factory gun is a 1 in 48, which means it's not exactly the best for round ball, and it's not exactly the best for conical ball. It's a compromise between the two, and it'll shoot either one of them within reasonable accuracy. I've got a little bone-handled pocket knife that I can use for a patch knife if I need to cut patches for the round ball. And then I got this little container here that has pre-cut 54 caliber pre-greased patches that I can carry. So each one of these has a little lube on it already. I can just flake one off if I'm using a separate round ball. Mostly though, I got my little load block right there. This little outside pocket, I've got a couple of homemade tools here. This has got a little built-in pick. And this right here is a flint hammer, so I can reshape and resharpen the flints. You can get anywhere from 10 shots to 100 shots out of a flint. Just depends. Because what happens is when this flint strikes the frizzing, it flakes off a little bit of that steel and makes sparks to drop into the pan. So this is a little hammer that you can take, tap, 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 break off the edge, make it sharp again. And on this end over here is a screwdriver built in, so I can loosen the screws and take stuff apart in the field if I need to. Set that off there. And I've got a little homemade ulu knife. So you can use this for cutting up veggies. or helping you with skinning. This thing is razor blade sharp. I hammered this out of 1095 carbon steel in my little blacksmith section. And it's, like I said, just an extra little knife that's pretty handy for, you know, whatever camp chores you have that you might need. There's another little homemade screwdriver. I hammered this out of my blacksmith forge. This one has a modern taper point to it instead of the old antique style. Didn't take long to make that, just hammered that out. And I have a homemade pressure flaking tool. What that is a hard copper rod with a rounded point that I set into a deer tine. So when I'm breaking something up with the hammer, but I need to make smaller little chips, what I can do is take that, hold the flint in my hand, push against it and twist, and I can break it off and sharpen it with pressure. So that's called a pressure flaking tool. And down the bottom I got a couple more spare flints. And last but not least, I have a little Ted Cash oiler. So what this does is I have oil in this, jojoba oil, actually, instead of gun oil. Because back in those days they'd have used whale oil, which was a, what do they call that, a lost wax ester, some kind of esterless wax out of a whale's, sperm whale's head. Well, jojoba oil is also the same type of oil, molecularly similar. But this little oiler here has a spot where I can apply tiny little drops to individual spots that I need. So instead of using a modern gun oil, which combines with the gunpowder fouling and gums everything up, I can use this and it doesn't have the same effect. So that's all the gear that goes in the possibles bag that will keep this gun functioning in the field. Now, like I said, you don't have to go this route. You don't have to have all this gear-intensive stuff. You can go with something really, really simple. But since I'm running a flintlock, and the long hunters from the 1700s and the mountain men of the 1800s had to carry everything with them in the field to keep their guns functioning and pretty much to make camps. So that's why I have such a gear-intensive bag here. So let's move on to the next one.